Thank you. Thank you. Bonjour à tous. Merci beaucoup d'être là, d'être si nombreux, à la fois ici dans la salle de l'ÉCAL à Renan, aussi sur Internet, puisque cette masterclass est retransmise en direct. Je vais animer cette masterclass avec Nayla Ebinger et Donita Yashi. Je suis Benoît Rossel, je suis réalisateur et professeur ici à l'ÉCAL, et on est très contents, très fiers, very happy to meet
thank you.
Willem Dafoe.
Thank you.
Once again. We are very happy also that les Rencontres du 7e art organize this meeting.
Yes.
It's a great opportunity for us.
Yes.
And I think Donika and Nayla did that interview for the first time. So they are a bit stressed, but I know you will manage to help us.
Yes, we'll manage. Yeah.
I thought we could organize this discussion into 3 parts.
Okay.
To know a little bit more who you are, where you come from, what was it during the 70s in New York when you arrived, and then also more about what is acting, and also after move on to the future, to the new project, to new ideas, and to some question also Donika and Nayla have.
All right, I follow you.
I was wondering, I mean, when you arrive...
I'm going to go a little bit like this, so I'm kind of looking at the people too.
Okay. Yeah. When you arrived, you were in your 20s, you arrived to New York. What was it at the time? Why also makes you move to New York?
Well, I grew up in the middle part of the country, of the U.S. near Canada, in the state of Wisconsin. And, I never decided to be an actor, really. But I went to school for a little while and then dropped out. I'm a high school dropout and a college dropout. I never finished either. And I started working with a small company that made their own work in the biggest town in that state. And I was with them for a little while, and we toured a little bit. And then I just felt like there was a small press bookstore in the lobby of that theater in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I was reading about Bob Wilson, I was reading about Richard Foreman, I was reading about Grotowski, and I felt like I had to go to New York. That was Mecca for what was going on. So eventually I made my way to New York. And sort of to make a living, I thought I would pursue traditional actors' theater. I was a theater actor. But then I got there and I just found myself always going downtown to loft performances and watching dance, and much more attracted to what was happening in the galleries than I was in the theater. So I was there, and then I started working with this, I saw this company called the Wooster Group. And I was very attracted to their work, and I just wanted to be around those people. And I basically insinuated myself into that company by making myself available, working as a carpenter and doing small roles. And then I started, doing larger roles. And then I started out as the youngest in that company. And when I left, about 15 years, a little over 15 years ago, I was, apart from the director, who was my partner, I was the oldest. So in that time, that changed. So why New York? It was Mecca for me. It was where the action was. And I didn't have career aspirations so much as I was a young kid. I wanted to see what was going on. And New York was it for me.
Yeah, because at the time, New York was very, it was a bit run down.
Very run down.
But lots of possibilities,
well,
painting,
what
dance.
happened, what happened is there were still places where artists were homesteading. They were occupying buildings that were, had no value. They were able to make spaces. I think the Wooster Group, this company that I worked with for many years, the reason why we survived is because we had a home that we could always work at. And as long as we could pay the mortgage, no one could kick us out. So even if we fell out of favor, we could still work. And our strategies for living were very simple, just make enough to live. Because we were young and we enjoyed being with each other, making this stuff, and showing it almost every night, showing a lot of stuff in progress. We'd work during the day, and then at night we'd show kind of what we had. And we'd work that way for a long time. And it was a good way to work, because it made, when you're working on something, there was no waiting. It's not like, oh, that's for later. You were doing everything for then. And what you had is what you had. What you were working on, there was an immediacy to it, and kind of a lack of preciousness, because it was very, task-oriented. It was very connected to action rather than, rather than some kind of grand plan for a message or something like that. The message was created, but it was created always through action.
Yeah, because at the time, Robert Wilson, Philip Glass, Richard Foreman, Wooster Group, Yvonne Rainer, John Jonas, Robert Rauschenberg, all those people were mixed. Yeah.
What was great is there was a time where, I think this is true, it's always difficult because as you remember, you kind of can get nostalgic and kind of romanticize it. But it was pretty cool that, for example, Wooster Group was a community theater. And that always hurt my feelings when the director would say, we're a community theater, because community theater meant non-professional. And there was great love for kind of an amateur aesthetic. Amateur in the respect of, people that loved what they did, but they couldn't exploit it, for a career or financially. So I always had a problem with that, I guess, because I grew up middle class or something, I don't know. But we were in this community, and that community was full of people making music, making dance, and there was a huge exchange. And people that later, both in the art world and the music world, that had big careers, they didn't start that way. They didn't start that way in the respect that didn't seem like that was their intention. Yeah. It was a community of people that weren't so career-minded. There was a certain kind of narcissism and a certain kind of celebration of this, telling my story and kind of hands-on with your friends, making things. Yeah. Sometimes with very poor resources. And that's what was going on, but it was very exciting. And if you lived in that community, every night there was something going on.
Yeah. So it's a mix of making things and curiosity, because it was...
Yeah, and it's for me, it was like I just wanted to be around fun people that excited me, and people that were introducing me to new ideas, and the whole notion of having, being an artist of any kind was exciting, and I could very romantic, and it was all tied into social things, and I won't say, I'll censor myself for a second.
Leila, tu voulais poser une question?
I was wondering about your career in theater, because ever since the Wooster Group, you still did some theater gigs, and so I wanted to know what do you see in theater that you don't really in cinema, and how your experience in the Wooster Group impacted you in your acting career now? Like, how do you draw the line between acting at the theater and in cinema?
Yep, okay, good. Wooster Group, had a heavy stamp on me. It really formed, that's where my ideas about performing and my experience, this whole idea of doing rather than showing. And also the technicians are the same as the actors, and the actors are the same as the technicians. It's about function, and it's about making things and pure. It's about presence, and it's about doing things gracefully, without being too obsessed with what the fruit of that labor is, but really enjoying the labor itself. So I learned that at the Wooster Group. This kind of task-oriented, kind of a little bit against theater traditions of literature and, dramaturgy, addressing the less tangible aspects of theater. The thing that I always miss in film, that most film, not all film, but most film that I get in theater is the physicality of it. You can do very physical things in film, but you don't get that kind of arc in an evening. And I also like how you wake up in the morning and your day prepares you for that thing that you're going to do at night. Not that you're thinking about it, but everything feeds into reanimating that score that you've created for that evening. And that's like, I always feel like I want to look forward to something, you know? Mm-hmm. So when I wake up and I know there's a performance that night, everything points to that. I don't live that life to create an inner life for that performance, but I like that feeling. Yeah, the physicality of it, and it's very healthy, I think, also, this thing of, there's all kinds of theater, but generally, you've got a score, and every night you have to reanimate it. Mm-hmm. And that's a beautiful practice. And if you get practice at it in your profession, you also get pretty good at it in life, you know? So I feel healthy when I'm doing theater. It can really drag you down because it's, you know, fuck, I'm going to do this again. But if you can make a head switch and always find a way to, you know, refine, I mean, it's very romantic, but I think you can do it, or you can practice trying to do it. If you can, you know, re-see every night, that's thrilling for me. And film, you know, you do, generally speaking, there's exceptions, but you go to a location, maybe you get a little rehearsal, maybe you don't, but you're there, something happens, it's thrilling, it gets recorded, but you don't go to the same kind of level of deepness, because you can only find a kind of profound understanding of something if you keep on revisiting it. And with film, you're playing with first time. You don't have that exercise so much of reinvesting something that you've done before and making it, animating it, making it come alive. So I miss that sometimes. You know, you go to a location, you do it, it's exciting, it's new, you're turned on, then you go someplace else. You don't sit with stuff very long in cinema, you know, as a performer like you do in theater. And after the Wooster Group, I think one of the difficult things is when you're a company, and even though we had a very, very, very strong director in Elizabeth Lecomte, a great director, there was a certain amount of collaboration. And since we made things from scratch, we were actually making the pieces, there aren't that many opportunities and like that. So my work beyond that has always been working with people I admired. Richard Foreman, who I always loved, Robert Wilson, who I always loved, and Romeo Castellucci, who I always loved. So those are like three examples of people where I was happy to be an actor for them. You know, be a creature of their work, be, you know, a color in their canvas, you know. I like that too. But they have a very developed language, and it's not the same as being in a group of people where you're also peers and you're taking time creating something.
You just said it was about being a color in their canvas.
Yeah.
So do you think that you're at their services, or is it more like a co-working situation with the director?
You're at their services, but you're also, you know, there's, listen, if you're the color, you're it, you know? You're it and you're not it, and I think that's a good place to be for a performer, you know? I think I'm happiest when I forget myself, you know? I forget myself. You lose yourself in the action, and then something happens to you, and if you're honest about it and you're flexible, I think you're transparent enough that an audience sees that, and no matter how you cut or slice it or frame it, there's something there. There's something authentic there because you're having an authentic experience. If you get too crazy about what it means or where it's going or analyze it too much or prepare for it too much, I think you kill that kind of, you know, you look for opportunities where you can kind of be in free fall, I think.
Do you think Americans are more in the making and the European, of course it's not a generality, but are more in the psychology and the thinking?
No. I don't think so. I don't make a big distinction between Europe and the States in this regard. I think the biggest distinction is America has I don't know about now, but you know, always has a very vital popular culture, but the classical, you know, education and culture has a little shallower roots just by the nature of its history, where Europe is, you know, it's hard, you know, to be an architect in Italy when you've got all this shit around you, you know? It's hard to be make interesting theater, you know, when you've got this big moneyed state system in Germany with great traditions and great tradition of actors. It's hard to, you know, break out of that. Americans lack something for not having that tradition, but they also benefit from not being tied to that. That's pretty obvious, I think. But and that's a little my experience. Yeah. Do you buy it?
I buy it totally. No, well, I'll tell you other things. Just to come back to New York in the 70s, you made one of your first films with Kathryn Bigelow.
Yeah.
What was it? I was curious to know what makes you think she would be great as a director. I mean,
I was just happy to have a job. No, actually, my identity was I was a theater actor. And that's what I was doing. And I was downtown, you know, we were in our little bubble. And I was very happy. And they saw me in a performance, Kathryn and her co-director, Monty Montgomery. And they said, would you like to make a movie? Would you like to make a movie with us? And, you know, I tried to be cool and say, yeah, I think so. Well, send me the script. But actually, it was very exciting to think that I'd be going to make a movie. I had made little movies then, but this was more, felt more professional. So I played it cool, and I didn't know what it was. I remember, it always makes me laugh because I didn't know what to ask for, because I had no representation. So they like, what are the terms of the deal? And I didn't have any friends in the movie, so it's like, you know, what do I ask for? $10, $100, you know?
Did you think that the role was too big for you, maybe, at that time?
No, not at all. Too big?
Yeah, maybe because you said you did some short movies before. So was it
you know,
too much
when I say
pressure,
short
or?
movies, actually, I not so much the length, but they were movies that weren't for theaters. They were, you know, for friends and happenings and things like that, you know. But I mean, I had been in front of a camera before, so it wasn't so mysterious. But this was the first thing that intended to be, you know, in theaters.
but for example, what did she say to you at the beginning? To know that
She sent me a script, and I looked at it.
She sent a script.
She sent the script, and I read it, and you know, I do what I still do. I look at it and I say, do I want to do these things? Am I going to learn something? Is this going to take me to someplace interesting? Am I turned on by it? Am I challenged by it? Will I learn something? You know, all that. It's just what attracts you. You know, I'm always seeking that engagement, that kind of contact, where you feel like you're using yourself well. You know, you feel like you're, just turned on. You know, it either plays with a fantasy of yours, or you see a new perspective that makes things widen up for you. Because I think the role of an actor is always to kind of find the wonder and reimagine a world that is not yours.
Yeah. Danica?
I wanted to ask you, when you were younger, did you have confidence in yourself? And we had a few months ago Abel Ferrara, and we asked him how, if he had any tips to a young director, and he said to us, like, just say, I'm a fucking filmmaker, and so I will do nothing, I will do everything. And do you agree with that, or what do you think about that?
Yeah, I kind of feel like that. I feel like, you know, you do what you ought to do, and I feel like I ought to be a performer, if that kind of answers it. And that's really true about Abel. One of the things I love him. I've worked with Abel quite a few times, and he's a self-starter, and he doesn't know how to do anything else, you know. And that's his identity. And it sounds a little sad to say that, but he has that wonder all the time. Wonder like the.
Now, I mean, you started to speak about that, but when you start to read a script, the idea you started to speak about is you have to be attracted by it. You want to dive in it. There is something that rings a bell. That
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Because, like I say, every actor is different and every project's different. So there's no strict template or criteria for why you do something. But I'm attracted to people, you know. I want to be in the room with them. Yeah, you see something where it's something you don't know, you know, and you want to go towards it. That's all, yeah. I think.
It's to have more experience?
I think so. I think so.
Curiosity to go in another
curiosity and
country.
Adventure and stimulation and challenge. You know, everybody gets stuck, you know. The second we're born, we're faced with a couple of dilemmas, you know. Yeah. So then you say, how do I make myself useful in this life? How do I, you know, live well? And you live well by trying to figure it out. And the way to figure it out is by asking yourself questions. And if you can ask yourself questions in an active way by imagining and taking on and trying to believe in the experience and the point of view of others, that's interesting to me. Mm-hmm. And not only is it stimulating, but, you know, if you do it with a kind of sincerity, mm-hmm. It's a funny word, but really sincerity, real curiosity, not fake. That'll take you someplace. That'll take you to some place of, you know, engagement, but also peace. You know, be in this world, but also serving, you know, the things that this world doesn't give you. When I mean the world, I mean reality as we know it.
So, when you work on a role, many things can nourish what you.
Yes.
Sometimes it can be a detail. Sometimes it can be what the director would tell to you.
Yes.
Would you have an example of something, you know?
Well, one I use all the time is when I worked with David Lynch. Yeah. I like that role. I get very self-conscious about judging the things I do, but Wild at Heart. That's a really. Do you know this movie, Sailor and Lula, Cuore Salvaggio? Yeah. Sailor and Lula. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry. the French just isn't in me right now, you know. I read the script, I liked it a lot, and he said to me, I guess we better get you to the dentist. I thought, what the hell is he talking about? And I remember there was a little thing about this guy has ugly, stumpy teeth. And I put a limitation on myself. I thought, okay, they'll just make my teeth discolored or they'll... No, he wanted full dentures over my teeth. And I thought, cool, that sounds good. And then I went there, and the second I put them in, I couldn't close my mouth. I was always like this. And I tell it to any of you, go like this. And next you go like this. And you know, that was the key. That was the thing that made you start to get into that character. Yeah. And then a couple other things, costume accent, because that's like a fantasy character. Yeah. So you have something to work on. You have something to play with. Yeah. And then other things sometimes it can be more psychological, sometimes it can be something that a director puts on you. Classically, this film that I did fairly recently where I played a version of Van Gogh, it was very important to learn how to paint. And really, to learn how to paint became the key to understanding all the letters I read and all the things that were researched, because it gave me an active way to address these thoughts. Yep. You can't think about things, you got to do things, I think, to have the experience. Yep.
But when you say...
But?
No, it's not.
But what?
I'm not questioning what you said. I'm really not. Is it some things that, like when you say that you talked about At Eternity's Gate, right?
Yeah.
And so you had to learn to paint, but is it something that you thought you had to come up from yourself, or was it from a discussion with the director?
It was practical. I paint in the movie in real time.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
I actually paint, so that was a practical consideration. But as Julian taught me how to paint, he taught me how to see in a different way. And that seeing in a different way became the trigger to understanding certain things, at least from my perspective, to understand certain things that Van Gogh was writing about, and also gave me a key to see his paintings. On a movie like that, you have so much to play with. You're shooting in the actual places. You're often using actual words that he's either said or written, and you're copying his paintings. So through copying, through imitation, it's almost like you're summoning something, you know, not for an understanding of who he is, but you're having an experience that you're learning things. And when you learn things, you have a shift of understanding that makes you really able to pretend, because it's a new world for you, because you see a different way. Because really, it was fundamental that when I painted, he really taught me how, you know, what do you see? He taught me how to paint the light. He taught me how to, every mark, every time I touch the canvas, it's an action. And those actions, you know, play on each other. And once you get going, it starts to create a rhythm that you started, but it's working with you and without you, you know? And to get in that kind of head, there's no way you could have gotten that just thinking intellectually or just from reading. So,
now, what I wanted to mention is Julian Schnabel is a painter himself, so it's also...
Yeah, and his interpretation of how to paint, or his interpretation of Van Gogh's painting, is particular to him. That's why I jokingly say, when you make a movie, it's not a traditional biopic, but when you make a movie like that, you're not trying to account for this historical figure. You're just using him to deal with something in your life. You know, that's as much about Julian and me as it is about Van Gogh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you love to do experiences. I mean, the more...
Yeah!
the more...
It's a little embarrassing, but that's at the heart of it. And, you know, I think that's understandable to anyone, because if on some level of performing is pretending, it is a little bit like that thing that children have.
Yeah.
And
that thing that children have, that's funny.
Yeah.
And we don't.
And what would be a fair and balanced relationship between the director and the actor? Do you have...
How do... Sorry,
what would be a fair and balanced exchange between the director and the actor, like you?
The best thing, I don't know, it's different, you know. But I really, I sort of choose my projects often off the director, because then I feel free. I don't worry about protecting myself. And if, you know, it's like when you, if you do something for someone else, and I don't mean this in a self-serving way, it's just natural, like when you first fall in love with someone, you know, you'll do anything for them, right? Yeah. And it gives you enormous energy, frees your mind, frees your heart, you're there. You have to have, you know, I've had adversarial relationships with directors, but still somewhere there's some sort of attention or commitment that's like that falling in love. And so I think ultimately an actor does have to submit, and they're a fool if they don't, because the director, a good director, is framing, is cutting, she is the watcher. And that's your audience. And if you're just performing for an idea of yourself, that you have of yourself or what you want to do, the camera won't be in the right place, and they won't cut it, you know, all or everything. So if you're not going to do that, if you're not going to be the director, the actor, do everything, then you might as well get someone you trust, someone that excites you, and you serve their vision. And when you go towards their vision, it's probably better than anything you could dream up. Because, at least for me, it's like probably why I'm not a director. Sometimes I get ideas for movies or things I think, oh, I'd like to do that in this sense of adventure. But it completes itself. Yeah. It completes itself. And then it really becomes kind of an exercise of ego and power in trying to achieve something. And that's okay, and some people are very good at that. But like I said, I'm a Midwestern boy. I get self-conscious after a little while, and then I bail, and it ceases to mean anything then. So I think you have to do it for someone else.
Yeah. Do you like the idea to say that the actor has to be like transparent?
Listen, when I say this, I'll only talk about me. Let's talk about me. No, I mean, talk about me in the sense that I don't think actors have to follow any rules any more than I think directors have to follow rules. I'm just talking about my experience, okay? Because sometimes it's fun to get work with people that have completely different experience of you, and you have to. I think it's fun to get to a set and say, what's going on here, and figure out where to fit in and where you can push and where you can pull. That's fun.
But what's funny is you made hundreds of films.
Yes.
You have now a wider experience than probably any of the directors you've been individually.
And I'm getting to be an old dude too, so now I'm working with young guys. And gals.
And girls, yeah. But then
more gals now than guys.
What are you doing to make them able to? I mean, your experience is much higher, so.
Yeah, but you try to give them confidence, and you try to be there for them. You take your cue off of them, you know, and you try not to be a jerk, you know, and you try not to be a bully. And sometimes if you disagree with them, or you think they're not up to something, you help in the way that you can help. But you better know that before you get into that. I mean, I think you really, you're the doer, they're the watcher. That's it, you know, and you have to surrender to that.
Yeah.
And do you have...
And besides, you know, the other part, it's kind of like the American-European thing. Yeah. The good news is the bad news, and the bad news is the good news. With younger directors, they're excited. They aren't cynical. They, you know, they're trying to make their way. And that energy is very valuable, and sometimes that's as valuable as experience, because some of the old dudes, not so many old gals, but, you know, they're a little done, you know, and that's kind of a drag, you know. So you try to find good energy, people that are excited to do something. There's no substitute for that, if you ask me. Yeah. My nightmare is going someplace where people, you know, where they're like, it's a chore. That's not what I sign up for.
No. Because Donika wanted to have you on her next movie, so that's why she was wondering what she could...
What's it about?
I want...
What's it about?
I have
Is it about something?
It's about a man who is putting makeup for the first time on.
Yes.
And I wanted you to ask you, do you have any tips for him, like how he need to play this, or how would you do you?
Put the makeup on.
Yes, for the first time. But you are not like someone who wants to change the sexuality, just a man who put makeup for the first time because he's bored.
What advice would I give to someone that is doing that? Wow, you mean like street makeup? Like it's a man and he's more or less putting what is considered most often women's makeup?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And he was bored, he was at home and he goes to the bathroom.
He's playing around.
Yes.
He's figuring stuff out.
Yes, he wants to pass the time.
What? Not too much eyeshadow. Choose a good lip color.
Like red, pink.
And yeah, do it. Put on the makeup and look at yourself, and don't think about interpreting it because that's not important. The action is important. I'm not sure that's good advice, but I'm not a director, so. Yeah.
Yes.
No, if I was listen, if I was doing that, I'd be excited, you know. I'd get my stuff, and you know, that would be what the inner life of it would be.
But it's
unless
hard.
There was something laid over it.
It's hard to do something like it's the first time that we have done, but not really, like to faire semblant que c'est la première fois.
To fake it's the first time.
Say again?
How not to fake it's the first time?
I don't know. I mean, the first time he does it will be the first time, so it will be what it'll be. And then the second time he has that memory and he can pull stuff from it that is useful, and then other places he can leave open, I think. You know, it's mix and match. It's like, that's the other thing that I like. I like sometimes directors that really bust your balls and give you lots of notes, because it becomes like a call and response. It becomes like a game, you know? They need something, you try to reach it. You back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It sounds like that's a very particular action. So, you know, you're gonna walk him through that. And he's got to be there, not too eager to tip his hand about what's going on. He's going to try to figure out how he feels as he's doing it. I think that's the way.
It's okay, yeah. Thank you.
Does that make sense to you?
No, yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, good luck with that.
Thanks.
And how do you like to be directed then?
Different ways. I mean, I've had directors that actually show me what to do, and some actors hate that, but I like it, because copying absolutely is impossible. That becomes a score for me, and sometimes when the score is worked out, you have great freedom, because a part of you is just being precise and giving, it's like a dance or a piece of music. Those are the notes, those are the steps. And then once you get that settled, there's a whole part of you that's able to live inside of those steps. There's that. And then there's other people that, you know, don't say anything. Paul Schrader, who I've worked with all the time, you know, he doesn't talk to me. Because he's invested in his screenwriting, and he says it's all there. And it would be futile to even ask him, why does someone do that? You got to figure that out. It's there on the page, you know. And I got you because you are who you are, and, you know, do it.
Each take you're doing is very different from the other?
I like to do that, but sometimes that's a fool's game, you know, because that's all. You know, you don't want to make it like a playground and you're just trying all kinds of variations. If it's the kind of movie that you're getting multiple takes, I work a lot of movies that don't get multiple takes, believe me, I really do. And that's cool, I like that sometimes. But, you know, it's sort of like what I said about the makeup thing. You know, you lay something down just to get a feel, and then you start to work on different parts of it, you know? And so each time you try different rhythms and rolling into stuff in different ways, how you enter it, how you exit it. You know, you do play around with variations, not for variation's sake or not for give a range of interpretations, but to try to find out what's there, I think, you know?
So it's very much in the moment, but then
yes and no. I mean, performing is always, you know, it's a lot of control and a lot of abandon at the same time. And you know, where the balance is, it goes like this, you know, and depending on the moment. Yeah. But I think you have to have that double focus, you know, you have to be totally committed and be totally there and only there. The world drops away, but at the same time, particularly with film, you've got to be conscious, and I like it, you know, knowing where the camera is, knowing, you know, dancing with the camera. And I like that in a similar way that it gives you a score. It organizes your impulses and organizes. It's a discipline. You stay on it. It's like you give an actor things to do. That's why that, you know, you hear about business. Business. Where are you going? Lunch? But, you know, like business, if you get in movement, you can't be self-conscious if you're really concentrating on accomplishing things, you know? You know? So calm me down if I'm getting too nutty. See, it's the difficulty of I hear this is very good school, but I don't really know my audience. And of course, you're going to always adjust things to, you know, so you can reach some sort of understanding and not be, yeah.
But it's also something that we spoke a lot about film, but actors also love to play with the audience in theater, and they feel, and each night it's different, and they...
Yes, but for me, that's abstract. That's abstract, you know, it's like a noise, it's like a subway rolling by or something, you know. You react to it, and particularly if it's a comedy or something, you know, you play with it, you know, you push it, you pull back, you push it, that's fun. But for me, it's always, like, one of my favorite experiences in the theater was I did this Bob Wilson show at the Armory in New York, which is a big space. And a lot of theaters, because of fire laws, you have fire, lights. And it ruins the pure darkness. In this place, it was so big that they were able to block those lights very far away, so we had pure darkness, like you blind.
Yeah.
And to be on stage doing things and not have any audience but having this energy was a wonderful place to be, because you can really go to another dimension.
I am.
I mean, it's like when you look at an audience in the theater, the idea is like Bob Wilson talks about, I think other people talk about this as well, but you play to one person, and if you go for one, you'll get everybody. But if you try to get everybody, you won't get anybody. So in my mind, as I look out at here, yeah, I'm scanning, I'm looking, but I'm thinking about not specifically one person, but I'm sending what I'm doing one place.
I think from now we will ask some questions from the people that are following us on YouTube,
okay.
and also people from the audience. So,
is my mic for? Yeah, okay, it works. So we have lots of questions from people online. First, a question from Geoffrey. John. Has acting made you discover parts of your own personality or character traits you weren't aware of?
All the time. Every day. Yes. No, I don't know how to elaborate on that. I mean, I have this, your idea of who you are is something you've constructed. And if you're interested in messing with that, and you're given a profession where you can play with that, yeah, then you're always having little discoveries. Some are not profound, some are. But being an actor, that's why a lot of actors are kind of neurotic or narcissistic or, thinking about themselves, because the target's always moving. Not all. Some know very well who they are, and they trade on that, and that becomes like they use themselves almost iconographically. And that can be interesting, but and maybe everybody does that to some degree, like we do it socially. We have an identity, and that becomes our calling card, and that tells us how to behave. And I may be fooling myself, but I try to not lean on that, because it becomes, gets flat very quickly.
Il y avait une question de Benjamin qui était dans la salle.
About the last temptation of Christ,
Yes.
You said there was a long search to find Jesus, and I wasn't involved in any of that, but that movie had a huge effect on me. So I was wondering what effect exactly, and I don't talking about the controversy, cause, or the polemics, but what effect did it have on you exactly?
I didn't grow up with any religious training, so, and of course the whole point of that movie was, to really play the human part, not the divine part of God, so, of Jesus anyway. So I get the two confused all the time.
Interesting.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Psychoanalysis.
Yeah, look, I think that was the beginning of some sort of spiritual study. That's all I'll say. And not necessarily Christian, but that's the start of something. And that was a fun movie to do, because people maybe forget, but that was a very low budget movie. And talk about doing actions. I mean, in the morning I was, healing the blind, and then on the afternoon I was up on the cross. I mean, this was not a cushy movie, and we were shooting in high desert in Morocco. No trailers, no makeup, it was on the run, and it was thrilling, because I always had lots of stuff to do, and the stuff I had to do was always very rich with, you couldn't escape. It's like being on the cross requires no acting. I can take anyone here, put them on a cross, and something interesting will happen. Whether you've had a religious background or not, whether you're a Buddhist, whether you're Jewish, it doesn't matter, just physically, that thing, and knowing that image, and being naked, and being, out in the air, and seeing that blue sky, I remember at this moment that I think about it, I recall how blue that sky was. That is tapping into something very powerful, for me anyway, as a performer. Whether it translates or not, I don't know. But there's a level of commitment and discovery that you can't plan. You can only make yourself available for something to happen. And when you have a strong scenario and you put yourself in it, it carries you after a little while. That's why it's so beautiful when you do a movie that requires a lot from you and you're working every day and you can't even think because you're doing, you're running, you're going, Abel's movie, Tommaso, totally shot in 11 days. I don't know whether you know this movie, but shot in 11 days, totally improvised. You couldn't think. You didn't, and it was kind of improvisation where you weren't thinking of writing, you were thinking of just accomplishing things. Because before, Abel would say, this is what I want to happen, or this is what happened, and then you'd go. No coverage, no setups, no, fluid camera. A great, Peter Zeitlinger, collaborated with Herzog a lot, shot that. That was great.
But would you say that...
I mean, a great experience for me. I don't know about the audience.
But would you say to be too comfortable, it could be dangerous?
No, I like a little comfort every once in a while. What's comfort? I mean, no, I'm trying to think. What is comfort? Like feeling like you don't have to do anything? It's kind of counter-performing.
Yeah.
I'd say uncomfortable in a comfortable setting. That's probably a good way to approach things. Because you need something to push you, you need something to get you going. I mean, you can't wait for something to happen. You gotta, I always like this. One of these guys like Dashiell Hammett or someone like that once said, whenever he got stuck in writing, he'd always have a man show up at the door with a gun. And that would get him to the next step, and then he could take that out because he was flowing again. I relate to that as a performer a little bit. You gotta, and I'm not talking about manically, you just have to feel like, what do we do now? You gotta keep on moving. You can't sit in it too much, I don't think. At least I can't. When I say you, I mean me.
Maybe another question from the...
Yeah. Is it working? Yeah. So it's another question from online. Geoffrey asks you, how do you work facial expression for a character? How do you work facial expressions for a character?
I'm sorry, I really don't maybe help me. What would that mean?
Facial expressions.
I don't think about my face. I never think about my face. One thing I do know about it is it's expressive. To a fault. That's not true. Sometimes I think about my face like I got to calm it down because it has a mind of its own. Like if I'm really engaged in something really, it gets really extreme. That's not something I'm trying to do. It's just the nature of science, biology, But this idea that pulling faces, even if I don't know, I don't do that.
Quelqu'un d'autre
Ah, là-bas.
Il y a un micro qui voyage.
Hello. Thank you for being here. I'm up here.
Yes, hey.
I had a question about a particular performance that you did for Beyond Two Souls, the video game.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, on one hand, how it was for you to perform in a video game and then see your digital self reenacting your emotions. And also, what's your take on the blurring lines between movies and cinematic video games that's becoming more and more common?
Good. I did this movie. It's not a movie. It's a game. I'm confused. I did this game with this French game maker called David Cage. And it was called Beyond Two Souls. And it was shot, it was mocapped, the whole thing. And basically, you were creating information for them to, for the computers. So it was kind of cool because you sketch through everything. You're working very fast. And so you don't really worry about certain details. It was really interesting. I still haven't quite digested it, but you're driving in a car and you're literally got like a piece of cardboard, and everything is sketched. It's in a mocap room with all these cameras around you. You've got these dots on your face, and you're working very fast. But in the sketching, it doesn't make your commitment any less, really, but you lack a kind of, you aren't concerned so much with detail. And it was amazing how that freed you. That's just my memory. I felt very emotionally fluid when I did that because where you set down things, you didn't have those distractions of technical things so much. You only had a text and have to approximate things. And so you had the pressure off. It was weird. You had the pressure off of it being wondering whether you accomplished what you needed to accomplish. You were creating material. And that was fun. I'm not sure I described that very well. Do you have any feel for it? Because, mocap, it's a room. It's a blank room. And you're doing 20 pages a day. It was insane. You can barely remember the text. Or they'd have cards sometimes. But that kind of velocity pushed you to you'd be surprised, not be sloppy, but, it emotionally, it made you very fluid.
Not thinking.
Huh?
Not thinking.
Not thinking. And I remember I did a theater performance many years ago called, it's an O'Neill play called The Hairy Ape. And normally, because it has different locations and all that, it's a very long play. The director, Elizabeth LeCompte, wanted to do it very fast. And it's a very repetitive text. And I thought it was interesting, but I wasn't really relating to the text. I thought it was kind of a shitty, early play of O'Neill's. But then when we started to do it very fast, because there's lots of text, it's basically a rant, it opened up, for lack of a better word, the meaning or the impulse behind the text, because the repetition became musical. And I would have never gotten to that if I hadn't been pushed with that velocity. And me, personally, I don't have fast rhythms. I'm more comfortable kind of slow, cool. But this pushed it, and the repetitions all of a sudden started having a life of their own. And when something like that happens, that's what working with text is about for me. So I don't know whether that quite relates to your question, but that's an impulse where the technical conditions force you to do something that's out of your normal being and your normal way of performing. And if you jump on it, it can find you a new approach, and also can make you find different parts of yourself that you didn't know you had.
Merci. Peut-être encore une dernière question dans la salle. Je vois qu'il y a quelqu'un avec un t-shirt jaune.
I don't know if you can hear me really well, but I wanted to ask you, last year, Abel came to Switzerland and he presented a movie called Siberia, which you participated in. And my question
You screened
was,
Siberia here?
Yeah, they played Siberia here.
Oh, okay.
It was cool because it came out, 2 years before, but then it only came here then. It was really cool. My
Good.
question was, do you think that was your most complex character to portray to date? Because he talked to us about, Jungian theory and how important he was to incorporate your own therapeutic experiences into it. And I wanted to know if that's what made it the most real, most authentic, and yet most complex character you've had to portray.
I wouldn't say that's the most complex character I've played. But to create some of the text, some of the events in Siberia, he sent me to a psychiatrist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I had never been to a psychiatrist before. And we recorded a lot of stuff, and we used some of that text and some of the things that we talked about in the scenario. So I had a kind of different stake in it. But the nature of the film also made it very fantastical and less personal, because it had all these wild locations, and it was kind of he was interested in exploring dream images, and sometimes he would just come in and say, I want a fight with a bear, things like that, or I want you playing with these toys, and then we'd develop it. So I'm not sure that was the most complex.
Well, thank you very much. Do you want to say a last word?
No.
Okay.
But we can take one question, because that was a dud answer.
A last question.
Yeah. This guy, he's got long arms.
I'm a big fan of Oliver Stone movies, and I wanted to ask you, maybe you can tell us a little bit from your filming of Platoon, because I think that movie made you famous all over the world. You were for sure known already in the US, but maybe you have some insights. I can imagine it was quite an interesting film.
It was really fun. It's fun to play soldiers, which is kind of sad, but you have a bunch of young guys, haven't made a lot of movies, you ship them to the Philippines, and you play war, basically. And the guy that has you playing war really had these experiences, and he wants it to stick. He doesn't want it to be bullshit. So he's training you, and we trained, actors always talk about the preparation they did, but this was really hardcore. And it was an example of, we learned how to do soldier things, and that's what made us soldiers. So I really did know how to navigate in the jungle. I did know how to clean my weapon. I was involved in those things. That's a case of learning something, and it changes how you think, because I didn't have that experience before. So it has a funny effect on you, and really opens the door for pretending you're someone else, because you take on these new skills, you take on these new ways of thinking. So, it's dramatic. He's a very muscular filmmaker. This was a personal story. We're a bunch of dopey kids that are, trying to help him tell that story. And we're game because I was like the last year of the draft in Vietnam. So I was never threatened with going. And as almost an adult and adolescent, the war, was very much out of favor. And I didn't think specifically about the war, but it was a war we saw on TV every night. And it colored a lot of things. And that comes up against kind of the mythology of World War II. that formed a very strong thing in Americans' minds about their power, and you were stuck between these two things, and to be able to exercise, them in this movie was interesting.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope there wasn't too muddy. I hope there wasn't too muddy.
No, it was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Good,
much.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Is it okay? Okay. It wasn't too muddy, was it?
No, it's perfect. It was really good.
Okay.
Really good.